Fred, let's talk about probably, it's not the most famous case in Pennsylvania, but it's one that's gotten a lot of recent publicity. But before we talk about the Bucks County case, these are my two files on it. This is the Cliff case that you're familiar with, you know, with the airport radar. This is the Denise case, the woman with the metallic sprinkles in her tree. Before we do that, was there anything in the news? You were saying there was something you want to tell us about.
I recently got an email, and it stated it was the FBI, it was an FBI memorandum that actually described UFOs and the aliens in it, which I didn't believe. All right, so I went to the webpage. It's actually on the FBI webpage, and I like to read it here. It came from San Diego, California on July the 8th, 1947, right after Roswell.
Yeah, it's right after Roswell.
And what it really states is, it says here, a very serious, one thing before I go, is very serious situation may develop anytime in regard to flying saucers. If one of these should be attacked, the attacking plane will almost certainly be destroyed. Now the FBI is saying it's right after Roswell. But anyhow, what it says here is, part of the disc carry crews others are under remote control. So some of the discs have people in them and others don't. Their mission is peaceful. The visitors contemplate settling on this plane. These visitors are human-like but much larger in size. They are not excarnate Earth people that come from a world of their own.
Well, think about that. Hold on a second. This, at some point, this is the one that started to be seen, the 3.5, 4 foot. But back then in 47, they're saying they're peaceful and they're taller, the tall grays, because they say the tall grays like 6, 7 feet tall. So that's, but this whole thing changed, and we'll talk about that. That changed later. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, they do not come from a planet as we use the word. They come from an etheric planet which penetrates with our own, is not perceptible to us.
It's like a dimension.
Interdimensional.
Yeah.
The bodies of the visitors and the craft automatically materialize on entering the vibratory, they say here, rate of our own dense matter. So what they're saying, as soon as they hit here, they can actually come into our atmosphere or our dimension. Okay, the disc possess a type of radiant energy or ray which can easily disintegrate any attacking ship. They re-enter the etheric at will. So what they can do is just vanish, and they do that right now. I mean, how many people say they see a UFO and it just vanishes?
Well, Fred, that's why Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek concluded UFOs were not from space. And I read that in both of their books, and I said, what? But they concluded it comes through a dimension, through the ethereal, however the word said. It comes through a dimension, they materialize, and they can dematerialize back into this other dimension. And I think that's what this is.
Okay. Then it says the region from which they come is not the astral plane, but correspond to the locus or telos. Students of astronomic matters will understand these terms. What it is, the locus is an oval-shaped, fluted length oval with a heat-resisting reinstating metal or alloy not yet known. The front cage contains the controls. The middle portion, a laboratory. The rear contains armament, which consists essentially of powerful energy apparatus, perhaps a ray. And then the last is, they probably cannot be reached by radio, but probably can by radar, if a signal system can be devised for that apparatus. But what's really interesting here, okay, when did you have the crash at Roswell? July the 4th.
Yeah, it's just 3 days before that.
How did the FBI come up with all this information?
They had to get
in 3 days.
But here's the thing, though. The FBI was denied access to this investigation because remember, J. Edgar Hoover, they asked him to get involved in UFO investigations in 52, and he said, only if I can get access to the information on LA, meaning Los Alamos, this case. But here's a memo, and then there's the Guy Hotel memo that comes out a little bit after this, talking about the same thing, and that the FBI did no further follow-up on this.
But is it possible that we actually was investigating this stuff before Roswell?
Yeah.
And we actually knew who these people were? Roswell may have actually been a craft that was shot down by us, and we made it look like
Well, a couple of points.
You know?
He talks about radar. They said
Right.
Roswell came down because of 3 radar stations.
Right,
Was it Roswell or Aztec? One of them. I think it was Roswell.
yeah.
The radar does something to the craft and brought it down. So
Right.
that's interesting that he meant. But then he also says they can't be contacted by radio, right?
Right,
So
but by
why?
radar.
Why is SETI sending messages to space, radio messages basically, but yet here's a memo from 1947 saying radio doesn't work, but yet SETI's spending millions of dollars doing that, because SETI is a placebo. SETI is working with the intelligence community.
Yeah, the same with Cape Kennedy. They're
Yeah,
a placebo.
I agree
There's
with you.
something out there in another part of the country that we're sending people to Mars by now.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, for the FBI to actually put this out is amazing.
Well, that's one of the things that keeps me in this field, is that when you look at the number of documents and memos, and as a matter of fact, in my new book, The Case for UFOs, I have 111 pictures and documents, and the documents is what keeps me, because it's the government is writing these memos between the CIA and the FBI, the NSA. There's a handful of NSA.
Right.
It's got to be real. You don't find memos, on other things. You find it on this.
When I was doing the Todd Cease investigation, and I called the FBI up, and I spoke to one of the female field agents, and I said, Bob, were you guys around there? Which I know she's going to say no, but and she says, obviously, sir, you have no idea what what you call it is with the FBI. We do not investigate UFOs. I said, really? I said, how long have you been an agent? And she said, like 5 years. I said, well, you better check your history. And she got very upset about that. If you really look at the history of the FBI and UFOs, there's like 10,000 pages they got.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if not more. I got them all
Absolutely.
in folders at home.
Well, the most evidence came from the CIA, then the FBI,
Right.
and the NSA has a little bit. And then, of course, Scully and Mulder are FBI.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. So FBI is involved in this.
Right.
So that's interesting news. And but like I said, if you pick out a few things, like to me, the radar, the radio waves, that just out SETI, So no, it's
But I'd like to know how they got this information. Is what
So
I'd
quickly,
like to know.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds like 9/11 to me.
Well, yeah. How did? Yeah, they knew.
They knew
right away.
exactly
They know
what happened.
And there's reports of them reporting some things minutes before that happened.
Right. Conspiracies everywhere.
Because you got to get the story. But the other thing we wanted to talk about was the Bucks County case. And let me start with the Cliff case, because we always do Denise and then we never get to Cliff.
Right.
Actually, the episode I did on Close Encounters, they aired the Denise one. They never got to air the Cliff one. The show actually got canceled the last few episodes, and it never made the air. But the Cliff case is interesting. And this is the actual radar discs that we got on this came actually from the Philly airport. And those discs cannot be read. You can't stick that in your laptop.
Right.
You have to have what they call the Raptor program to read it. So you have to go to an airport who's going to put it in and read it for you. And we've got some connections who do this for us through MUFON. So I've got the real discs. So what happened with this case is really 2 incidences with this Cliff guy. I mean, there's hundreds of sightings in 2008, really starting in April through about September, and then that's it. We got about 250 cases on this sighting alone.
Right.
Normally, we didn't even, at the time, we weren't even getting 100 cases for the whole year. We got 250 in about a 3-4 month period. But this guy, Cliff, he's laying in bed, his dog starts barking, he wakes up. He looks out the window, he sees this large object moving really slow. And he says, John, it couldn't stay. If it was a plane, it would have fell. Right. He said it's moving at like 10, 20 miles an hour. First he thought it was a cloud. Then he looks and he sees structure. And he says this thing is bigger than his backyard. He said it was about 600 feet at least. And it's huge. So then what happens is it happens again about a month later, and this is where we were involved, involved at that point. He says, John, this time it's coming. He wakes his wife up. Again, the dog barks, wakes him up, he sees it. They go outside, there's a heat lightning storm, right? So you're getting the flashes of, lightning. He says, I'm looking up, and what happens is the lightning goes off. He sees it. And it looks like 6 triangular UFOs docked together. Because when the lightning went off, you could see in between the grooves. So they were in like a docking station.
Right.
6, maybe 100-foot UFOs, triangular, docked together. And he sees it. And he says it's moving really slowly over Doylestown. And then it takes off to the northeast towards New York, right? So the interesting thing, though, is that the field investigator there, the chief investigator at the time, he went to the tower and met with them, and they said that they had a large object with no transponder at 4:20 in the morning over Doylestown, heading towards the airport, and then it veered off to the northeast and it disappeared. It matched up with Cliff's case, which is amazing.
Well, it's amazing they said that.
Yeah, I got the impression they were trying to help us. I really got the impression they wanted to help. But then what happens is I get the FAA involved, right? And somewhere in my notes here, well, here are the screens. You could see the screens. Well, they send us the discs, right? The discs are copied over. So they're corrupted and they're copied over, but our guy was able to pull these screens off. There's 6 actually, but he was able to get 6 screens that show, I think the green is the objects with no transponder, the blue is the objects with the transponder. He actually gets this off of it. So I contacted them now and I say, well, now at this point, I need a radar confirmation from the FAA, right? So check this out, Fred. So I send my I send my Freedom of Information Acts in. Here they all are. October 2nd, October 23rd, the following July, and then I get this response. Look at those first. Those are, and basically the FAA comes back and says that it's beyond the record retention period. There's nothing to check, right? So I get back to the person at the tower, and I tell them, well, wait a minute, you got the information. It might not be sitting on your desk, but you have filed it in a cabinet. And she replies to me, right? Look, what does that say? I do have a copy of the CD.
No.
And she sends it. Here are the copies. Here are the CDs. So now the FAA, in 4 requests, has told me there's nothing. This is out of the FAA in New York, I think it was. There's nothing. But I got all the evidence from the Philly Tower. So it is something. So, I mean, an amazing case where we get into this battle trying to figure out, where's the evidence, and it's there.
See, what I think they actually got 2 discs on. They got one disc that runs 24 hours a day, everything comes over, that's a corrupt disc. And then they got another disc. So they use the corrupt disc when they send it to you.
Either that or they took them and just copied over them.
Right.
Somebody copied over these discs because they shouldn't be like that. They should be a clean disc. It's like taking a VHS tape and then reusing it, but maybe underneath the image is still there.
Right.
Is basically what happened. So, this Cliff case doesn't get the kind of publicity that the Denise case gets, but I thought this was an app because he was an extremely good witness. He was living a retired contractor. He didn't want to bring attention to himself, and living in a beautiful home there in Doylestown. There's no reason for him to make this stuff up. But the cool thing was that what he said matched up exactly to what the tower told us. And then you can't get anything out of the FAA. And I'll tell you something else that happened with this case, which is interesting. We're filming UFO Hunters with Bill Burns on the History Channel. We're doing the Denise show. I'm on the phone with them because the person at the Philly Tower says it's okay to bring your cameras up and film us on the Cliff case. So I'm driving to Philly to film the Denise case. The producer, John Greenwald, who works with MUFON, he says, John, I can't break off from Levittown to go to Doylestown or go to the airport. That's a different show and a different producer for that show. So we missed the opportunity to go to the airport, interview these people, and get it on film before the FAA stood in. But what happened with that, in that drive to Philly, which is 5 hours, I got the call, I'm driving. I get another call from the History Channel. They tell me that the show on the Cliff case has been canceled. First he called, Kevin Barry was the producer. He said that, because I called them and said, they want us to come down. So I guess he must have called the FAA. I don't know why he did that. They said, no, you're not allowed to go to Philly and film. Then a phone call, he called me back after that and said, we're not doing the show on Cliff. I mean, you got all the evidence you need and they're not doing the show. I mean, how has that happened? And then 2 episodes later, UFO Hunters is canceled. Bill Burns thought it was because of the Dulce case that they did. They came too close and the show was canceled. But this case, something is rotten in Philadelphia. Not Denmark, a lot in Philly.
A lot is
rotten in Philly. But with this case, there's something rotten in Philadelphia on
Well, the whole thing is, again, they gave you, this is like the case out in Philadelphia right now. They actually give you the first initial one. They're not really knowing what they're giving you, I don't think.
Right. They didn't think, well, the one email, or I don't know if she talked to me or sent me an email. She says to me, I'm surprised you were able to pull anything off that CD, which stunned me. I think it was a phone conversation. And I said to myself, if you sent it to me, why would you say, are you surprised you got anything? You should have said, oh, you pulled 6 screens, you should have pulled 16.
So they thought they sent you something.
They knew they taped over it. They were trying to be cooperative, but on the CD was the information. So there you got the cover up right there.
Once you got that, they're not going to give you nothing else. They're going to stop everything. Because they're going to prove that there was something there. The government can't answer it. I mean,
And the New York FAA is denying, got to the History Channel and denying. And then, even with this, Fred, to stay on this, what happened recently, this was 2008, right? Recently with Bill Weber, who's been on the show, the chief investigator, they had a couple of cases there. They were filing, I filed with the FAA. They were filing with a military base over in the Allentown area there and getting radar. Because he had the one case, I think it was 47,000, where he got radar. That's the one with a small, like Cessna. They got 9 UFOs. The Cessna's heading and veers away. And it's all on radar.
But again, I think what happened there, John, when they sent that, they didn't actually know what they were sending. They sent it, and then after they had it analyzed by the guy down in wherever he's at, they seen that, and now they know, oh, hell, we screwed up here.
But get this.
So
I agree with that they try to appease us with something and even copying over it. But what happened after that case where they gave us radar, it gets back to the FAA that we're getting radar through the local military. They shut that branch down of the FOIA. You can't get a FOIA now through that branch of the military because they were giving us good stuff. So who's the phony here? It's the FAA. The phony shut the FOIAs, the Freedom of Information Acts, through the military down. You have to go through the FAA for this type of stuff, and they don't give you nothing because we had the other case, we paid $95 to get the radar. They sent us a file, they sent us a disk. There was so much information on there in a format you can't read, and they deleted the column that has those prints that I showed you. They deleted it. So, I mean, what good is the Freedom of Information Act? They they copy over it, they delete the information, then they send it to you. Oh, you want it? $95. Here it is. Well, who can read it? It's not in Word. It's not in any sort of format that you could possibly read from. And so I filed a complaint. Get this. I sent a complaint in. I want the money back or I want the radar. They never replied.
They'll say they lost it.
Well, they probably would say, as state director, Dan filed for the radar, not me. But since I'm complaining, they don't have to answer to me as the state director. They only answer to him because he paid. But we paid for it. I wrote the check. I paid for it.
But see, they could do this, and like I say again, like we're saying TV and this and that and this and that. I think the government runs all the media, whatever they want. Somebody's
with the
running.
big editors. They do it with the big papers, not
Right.
the little papers.
Right.
Because you'll
They
get
can't get to the little papers.
Yeah, you can't get to them. They'll write a story. But I'm telling you, there was a Project Mockingbird where the
That's
CIA,
where they was running everything.
the
yeah.
CIA was involved with all the editors of the newspapers.
Well, if you remember
know?
back during Vietnam, when they had the military was actually working inside the TV stations.
Yeah,
that they
right.
taught them.
They were writing.
yeah.
They were
Writing
writing
the
scripts. Yeah,
Yeah,
they were
I mean,
writing scripts for the news and the
so
movies.
Whatever you hear on TV is coming from whoever. I mean, they tell them what to say, how to say, and when to say
Yeah,
it.
it's unbelievable. And matter of fact, that's my talk at the UFO conference at Westmoreland Community College is on the media and UFOs and how so much of this is covered up. It's a lie. It's the manipulation of the information because 3 out of 4 people will believe whatever an authority
Right,
says.
right.
3 out of 4 say, okay, well, what do you want to do? You want to go to McDonald's? You want to go to Burger King? Who's on Dancing with the Stars? They don't question what they're told.
Well, today it's balls. I mean, if you're watching football, baseball, golf.
Yeah, the
That's
sports.
what the whole world's about today.
Right, yeah.
You know,
Which way the
this-
ball bounces.
Yeah, this stuff here doesn't mean nothing to nobody no more.
No, and I found that out
know.
that there's, the people watching the show is good and our conferences are good, but you're talking about like 1% of the
Right.
population, 0.5%. The majority, even our TV show, Hangar One,
Right.
the ratings were 0.5%.
Right.
1.5 million people watched out of 300 million. That's 0.5%. That's the interest in this because the CIA did their job and they killed the UFO
Right.
by debunking it.
And they're
But
still
yet
doing
it's
it.
true. And that's why I wrote this book, The Case for UFOs, Fred. I gave you a copy of it. This is all the evidence that UFOs are real. This is 18 years of my knowledge, and you've been doing this longer. How long have you been doing investigations?
Since the 70s.
70. So you got 30, 45 years, whatever, investigating. I got into this late. I was
I don't
almost...
say that too often because I don't want people to know how old I am.
Well, I was 39 when I got into this, so mine's been 19 years now of investigating. But I put all those memos, the quotes, the documents, what I believe is the truth, and I wrote this book as really, MUFON should use this as a tool that all field investigators should read. I think, Fred, seriously, if you read through this,
I did. I
it
read a lot of
gives
good
you
stuff
a
in there, yeah.
lot of stuff you never knew. Like that one chapter on Do You Know, Should You Know? There's things in there that most people don't know. Kenneth Arnold wasn't the first to say flying
But
saucer.
I think that, again, we look at this stuff. It's like you, me, and a few other people. Like we've had some people in West Virginia, one of the state directors down there, they tell me that him and 2 other guys went to D.C. They was asked to come up here on a case. When they came back, they quit doing UFOs altogether. I think the whole thing is if you get too close, they come close to you.
Well, yeah, I agree.
And I mean, and this is the whole thing with it. So they debunk it, they debunk it, they debunk it. You and I will go out and fight for it, but then on the same token, you got 5 people debunking us.
Right.
So, what do you do?
They have somebody that...
Or they'll give you a case that's totally wrong, and you're going after it, and then they debunk you. Well, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful with going public. And so a lot of people want to see their name in the paper and want to go public. But what is the source of the information?
Right.
Is it bad information, disinformation? Are you being set up? And a lot of people, I just want to see my name in the paper, and they want to go.
And, and another thing with that, like, okay, say with MUFON, we say certain cases, if somebody don't want to talk to us, they want to be anonymous, they can call a report in and not do it. But it turns out that a lot of people call in reports. After they call them in, they got second thoughts about it. Then they don't want to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Because, we've had cases, like I got a call the other day from a guy in West Virginia who told me that he called MUFON 5 years ago on a case. And the next day he got a phone call from somebody,
But who are these people contacting them? I'm the state director, you're the regional director, you're the West Virginia director.
Well,
who is making these contacts to these people?
We got another case. Well, this guy said that they said you did not see nothing. You remember that, and they hung up.
Yeah.
We got the case in Monroeville with Sam got.
Yeah.
She's saying cars were sitting out in her yard. They told her straight, Fred Saluga and Sam Colosimo, you don't talk to them.
All right.
I mean, so who is doing it? I mean, unless these people are all crazy. I mean, you know, I don't know.
They're still
somebody
looking at it.
somewhere is doing something.
I agree.